Hey students, welcome to our third practice for checkpoint 4 that focuses on the id, ego, and the superego. So let's check it out. So this also is a two birds with one stone kind of situation. This is also the chapter 5 review, so it's going to be a lot shorter because you're doing an entire activity on chapter 5. So I didn't feel like it was necessary to do a full review on it. But what's happened prior to chapter 5? So far in The Great Gatsby, Nick moves to the East Coast to work in the bond business. He rents a house on West Egg, which represents new money. And he quickly reunites with his cousin Daisy and old friend Tom, who live on East Egg, which represents old money. However, it is obvious that Tom and Daisy's marriage, not so good, fallen apart. Tom is having an affair with Myrtle Wilson, and Daisy's very depressed. However, when Nick sets up tea between Daisy and his mysterious neighbor Gatsby, he realizes that their past young love has reignited. So this is happening in chapter 5. Gatsby and Daisy fall immediately back in love, making them both tremendously happy. However, Nick is concerned because Gatsby is obsessed with winning back Daisy. Gatsby has built his entire life around proving he is the wealthy, charming man that Daisy's always wanted. And so that's kind of what happens in chapter 5. And so this link takes you to the movie scene starring Leonardo DiCaprio. The following scene shows the quickly revived love that Gatsby and Daisy experience right after reuniting at Nick's for tea. If you go back out to the main document, you'll see that there's a link to this scene. I would watch it. It would be very helpful. And so what are you doing with chapter 5? So you're applying Freud's theory of personalities, the 3 parts of the psyche. Now, just to kind of let you know, this has been disproven. Psychologists no longer believe that this is true about the human psyche. It's definitely a theory of the past, or a hypothesis of the past. But it's still a really interesting kind of thought experiment, a way to think about how our brain works, and also a really fun way to kind of play around with the characterization of Nick, Gatsby, and Daisy. So what are we going to do? So first we need to understand what the id, ego, and superego are. So the id is presented at birth, and it strives to deal with immediate gratification of all desires. Then we have the ego, which is in between. It deals with reality and ensures that the impulses of the id can be expressed in an acceptable manner in the real world. And then we have the superego, which holds our moral standards that we learn from parents and within our society. The superego gives us guidelines for making judgments. So, what does this mean? Let's imagine that you're waking up in the morning. So if your alarm clock goes off and you're like, oh, I don't want to get up. And so you hit your alarm clock, you hit the snooze for like an hour before getting up. And then you finally stumble out of bed and you're like, I don't want to eat anything healthy. I want cake. So you eat maybe like a cake for breakfast and you don't brush your teeth because you don't feel like it. And then you like take your time getting onto your Zoom classes. Maybe you don't even show up for one. It is about the idea of kind of gratification of desires. I want to sleep. I want to eat. I don't want to do this. I want to go have fun. I want to watch this YouTube video. It's about the things that make us feel good and us kind of giving into that id. Then we have the superego, which is kind of the opposite. So the superego are the rules, the morals that we learn from parents and others in society. And so it's the guidelines for making judgments. So if I was ruled by my superego, my alarm would go off, I'd get up right away, I might go for a run because it's good for me, I would eat my chia bowl, and I would get to class early so that I could ask some really good questions. I do exactly what's expected of me. And then we have the ego, which is in between. So the ego kind of negotiates between the id and the superego. It deals with reality. The fact is that if we followed our id all the time, things would not go well. But also if we followed our superego all the time, things would not go well. Sometimes you got to take a break and enjoy life. And so the ego deals with reality. It ensures that the id's impulses can be expressed in a way that's acceptable in the real world where kind of the moral standards are expected. So it allows for you to enjoy yourself without violating social norms. And that's what the ego does. And so what I want for you to do with this kind of thought experiment, I want for you to apply these three kind of parts of the psyche to our characters in chapter 5. So in looking at our definitions of these terms, which characters are playing which roles in chapter 5? So I want for you to link each role to one of the characters: Nick, Daisy, and Gatsby. So between those three characters, which of those characters is kind of representing the id, which one's representing the superego, and which one's representing the ego? So link each role with a different character, and I want you to select one quote from chapter 5. And if you're like, oh, but there's a really good quote from chapters 1 through 4, okay, you can pull a quote from before chapter 5 if you really want to. But select one quote for each character to support this as groups. You might be working in a group, you might be working individually, but to support your claim, be prepared to explain how your quotes selection proves your position, and then record your responses in your corresponding document. And so that is what you're doing. So let's actually go to the document and look at it. Let me find it. Okay, so here is the document. Again, yours might look a little different depending on the class you're in. Let me see. No, they're pretty much the same. So again, you'll put the character's name here. We have Gatsby, Nick, or Daisy, so put them in where you think they go. Put the quotes that you're using to prove your selection, and then explain how that quote proves your choice. And then you have this final reflection question at the end. What are your thoughts about Gatsby and Daisy's rekindling their love? Furthermore, what are your thoughts on the role Nick plays in the reunion? So fill in this table, answer this question, and then you are done with this practice, and hopefully it helps you better understand our characters and chapter 5. All right, good luck. I'll see you later. Bye.